It's Miss Kristen
and Miss Kim,
and we are excited to be doing church online with you guys this morning. We are going to be learning about Abraham today.
But before we get started with that, we are going to hear some fun jokes with our high school friends that are our interns this summer.
Yes, and I love jokes because laughter is just good for the soul, isn't it, Kim?
It is.
All right, let's see what they have to say.
All right.
All right, guys, so this is Miss Kristen and Peter, and we have Cody Crawford here. He's one of our interns, and Grayson Canterbury, and this is my son. And Cody and Grayson are going to be reading jokes to one another without trying to laugh. So Cody, you are up first. No laughter, nothing.
Why did Johnny throw the clock out of the window?
I don't know.
He wanted to see time fly.
How do you talk to a giant? Use big words.
How do you throw a party in space?
I don't know.
You plan it.
What did the volcano say to the other?
I don't know.
I lava you.
It's a good relationship. What did the big flower say to the little flower?
What?
Hi, bud.
Grayson, you're so good at it.
Why did the student eat his homework?
I'm not sure.
Because the teacher told him it was a piece of cake.
I saw a smile there, Cody. You're cracking smiles. All right, last one for both of y'all.
What did one toilet say to the other?
What?
You look flushed.
I guess he is being flushed a lot. What do you call a boomerang that won't come back?
I don't know.
A stick.
That was awesome. Those were some awesome jokes, weren't they? And as you can see, we are doing things a little bit differently this morning, and we are going to start with a worship song.
We are, and I love this song because it reminds me that God keeps his promises, and that reminds me of a Bible verse in Genesis where God tells Abraham that I will always keep my promise that I have made to you and your descendants because I am your God and I am their God. So are you guys ready to listen to the song?
Shout and sing, standing on the promises of God.
right, that was a great song, wasn't it, Miss Kristen?
It was. I really liked it. And earlier I mentioned that we were going to be learning about Abraham. And the younger kids in Miss Kim's area actually learned a little bit about Abraham last week. So would you mind giving us a quick refresher?
I don't mind at all. So God wanted to choose somebody to represent himself to the world, and he chose Abraham. But his name at this time was still Abram.
Wait, Abraham, I know that name. It's the Father Abraham had many sons had Father Abraham. I'm one of them, and so are you. So let's all praise the Lord. Right arm, left arm, right leg, left leg. No, I'm just kidding. But anyway, I love that song because, and it reminds me of the patriarch era, because we're in the patriarch era, and patriarch is kind of a fancy name for the word father. And so yeah, but I have a question for you, Miss Kim. Why do you have this? What is this?
Well, so this is actually going to help tell our story a little bit, Miss Kristen. But honestly, my family likes to use sparklers. We like to use them on the 4th of July at night. But this reminds us of a big part of our story and something the younger kids learned last week. So what I want you to do, Miss Kristen, and all of you, is while you're watching this video, I want you to listen and pay attention to see, what does God tell Abraham about the stars in the sky?
Yeah, sparklers do kind of remind me of stars. They're so much fun. Yeah. And I want you to be looking for what, because there's kind of two parts, and I want you to be looking in the second part for what God provides to Abraham while they are up on the mountain. I want you to be paying attention.
All right, guys, well, let's remember what to look for, and let's watch the video.
Abram lived with his wife, Sarai. God chose Abram and told him to move to a place he had never been. God promised Abram 3 things: a large family, land for his family, and blessing.
God visited Abram in a vision and said, "Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield. Your reward will be great." This was a good promise, but Abram was sad. He didn't have any children to inherit his blessing. "One of my slaves will be my heir," Abram said.
But God had a better plan. He took Abram outside to remind him of his promise. "Look at the sky and count the stars, if you can," God said. Abram couldn't count the stars. There were too many. "Your family will be that numerous," God promised.
Abram believed God, and God was pleased. God also promised that Abram's family would keep the land they were living in. Abram asked, "How can I be sure?" So God confirmed his covenant with Abram. God told Abram to bring 5 animals: a cow, a goat, a ram, a turtle dove, and a pigeon. Abram did as God said, and he divided the animals. Then, when the sun was setting, a deep sleep came over him. While Abram slept, God told him what would happen in the future.
He said that Abram's family would be slaves in another country for 400 years. Then God would judge the nation and bless Abram's family. Even though these things would happen, Abram would live a long, peaceful life. When it was dark, a smoking fire pot and a flaming torch representing God passed between the divided animals. This showed that God would be responsible for keeping his promise.
Many years passed, and Abram still didn't have the promised son. God hadn't forgotten, though. He appeared to Abram again and reminded him, "I am Almighty God. I will establish my covenant between me and you, and I will multiply you greatly." God was so serious about his promise that he changed Abram's name to Abraham, which means father of a great multitude.
God told Abraham that he would be the father of nations, even kings. "I will keep my promise to you," God said, "and it will last forever. I will be your God, and I will be the God of your family, of everyone who comes after you." God also promised to give Abraham and his offspring all the land of Canaan where they were living. "You will own this land forever," he said.
God kept his promise to give Abraham a son. Abraham and his wife were very old when their son Isaac was born. One day, God tested Abraham. God wanted to make sure that Abraham loved God most of all. Abraham, God said. Here I am, Abraham answered. Take your son Isaac to the mountain and give him to me as a sacrifice, God said.
A sacrifice is anything of value brought to God as a way to show obedience, love, thanksgiving, or the need for forgiveness. During Old Testament times, a sacrifice usually involves killing an animal. This time, God asked Abraham to sacrifice his son Isaac instead.
Abraham obeyed God. He got up early the next day and left with Isaac, 2 servants, and a donkey carrying supplies. They walked for 3 days before they got to the mountain where God wanted Abraham to make the sacrifice. Abraham asked his servants to stay with the donkey, and he and Isaac went up the mountain with the supplies for the sacrifice. Isaac noticed something was missing.
My father, he said, where is the lamb for the offering? Abraham answered, God himself will provide the lamb. When they got to the place God had directed them, Abraham built an altar and placed the wood on top. Then he put Isaac on top of the wood. Just as Abraham was about to sacrifice Isaac, the angel of the Lord called out, Abraham, Abraham!
Abraham stopped. The angel of the Lord said, Do not lay a hand on the boy or do anything to him, for now I know that you fear God, since you have not withheld your only son from me.
Abraham looked up and saw a ram trapped by its horns in the bushes. He offered to God the ram instead of Isaac. Abraham named the place, The Lord Will Provide. The angel of the Lord reminded Abraham that God would keep the covenant he made with Abraham.
God again promised to bless Abraham, to make his family as numerous as all the stars in the sky and the sand on the seashores. God had promised victory over Abraham's enemies and blessing to all the earth through Abraham's family.
Abraham showed his love for God by being willing to sacrifice his son Isaac. This is how God showed his love for us. He sent his son, Jesus, to die on the cross so that we could have eternal life through him.
All right, guys, that was a great video full of a lot of information about Abraham.
Yeah.
And he made this covenant with Abraham. And this covenant had 3 main promises to it. Did you see where he told him that he would have as many descendants as the stars in the sky? Mm-hmm. Did you guys see that? He said that he and his descendants would have land.
The promised land.
The
which is
promised
kind of
land.
cool.
That is very cool. And that they would be a blessing to the world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And a covenant is what God made with Abraham. And a covenant is kind of like a super promise. It's a promise that is never broken because God does not break the promises that he makes. He is faithful and trustworthy, and he does not make the promise, and he does not break the promises that he makes. And God actually gave Isaac to Abraham and Sarah as a sign of fulfilling that promise, the start to having those many descendants.
That's right. And you know, he did it when he was 100 years old. Can you imagine that? And
No.
Sarah was 90.
When she was pregnant.
No way.
That sounds
No
crazy.
way. It's crazy.
And Isaac was a sign of God's faithfulness to that promise. He was kind of that first step in that covenant.
Yeah. And that's why it's so hard really to understand why God asked him to do what he did.
Yeah, because God asked Abraham to sacrifice Isaac, and that was a big deal.
That was a very big deal. But guys, Abraham trusted God even when he didn't really understand what was going to happen because he had seen God be faithful before. And even at other times he didn't understand. Abraham had seen that enough that even in this moment, he still trusted God.
Yeah,
That's
and
hard.
it's so hard. I couldn't imagine as a mom. I
can't.
can't possibly imagine as a parent.
No.
And I also asked you guys to look for this in the video because when they got up to the top of the mountain, what did God provide for them? Did you look at it? He provided a ram. He provided a way for for the sacrifice to still happen, but where Isaac didn't have to be the one. He spared Abraham's only son.
Yeah. And guys, I think that is so cool because that mirrors what God did for us. He sacrificed his own son, Jesus.
Yeah.
And that keeps us from having to die because Jesus died for us.
Yeah. I love seeing like the pieces of Jesus that are kind of like
From the
weaved
Old
into the Old
Testament.
Testament. I think it's really cool.
I think it's cool too.
And this is a big lesson. A lot happened. We saw God's faithfulness. We saw Abraham needing to trust, and not just once or twice, but through his life. And guys, we're going to be praying for you this week that we will begin to trust more in what God's plan is for us, even when we don't understand it, especially right now. It's been kind of hard.
It has been hard. And we want to end. We started with our interns, and we're going to end with some people doing an activity that represents trust. And so it's going to be like a trust fall. I don't know if you've ever done that.
Yeah.
But here's the thing with this. It gets easier each time you do it. Just like each time we trust God and we see that he's faithful, it gets easier to trust him the next time. So I hope you enjoy watching this part.
Yes, and we hope you do it. We hope you do it as a
Try it
family,
with your family.
as well.
Yeah. All right.
So we'll see you next week.
Have a good week.
Bye.